Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're running through 10 of the harshest punishments faced by footballers, managers and clubs. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more fantastic 10s. Mourinho bottles it. Now, Jose Mourinho isn't usually an easy person to sympathise with, and over the years has accrued countless fines and suspensions which have been more than deserved. But in November 2016, he was dealt with a little harshly by the FA. Shout out to @CIFEStar for suggesting this one on Twitter. The Portuguese manager is renowned for his outrageous behaviour, so it was hardly surprising when, during a frustrating draw with West Ham, he reacted to Paul Pogba's booking for simulation by kicking a water bottle out of his technical area. He was sent to the stand and afterwards fined £16,000 and handed a further one-match touchline ban. Not the craziest punishment in itself, but Mourinho's blood was boiling. 7 years earlier, Arsene Wenger actually received a letter of apology after committing the same offence at Old Trafford, and a few months after the United coach's ordeal, Slaven Bilic somehow escaped a ban after launching a TV microphone down the touchline. Mourinho is clearly finding that enemy of football tag hard to shake. But if you want to find out even more about the mischievous manager, why not head over to 90+1 Facts' latest video, 90+1 Facts about Jose Mourinho. Click on the link at the end of this vid, it's an absolute belter. 40 million down the drain. In at 9, we have an English club getting a hearty slap on the wrist, in the form of a rather hefty fine. Queen's Park Rangers' financial escapades have rarely looked like coming to anything positive, with the 17th place finish in the 2011-12 Premier League season proving the highlight. And in October 2017, things really came to a head for the West London club. They were charged with breaching financial fair play regulations and were sentenced to cough up £40 million, the biggest fine in the history of sport itself, trumping the £32 million dished out to the McLaren Formula 1 team for espionage in 2007. Sure, there are worse crimes, but QPR had it coming. In 2013-14, they signed a total of 19 players and racked up a higher wage bill than Everton while residing in the English second tier. And what did they have to show for it? Promotion to the Prem through the playoffs and a total of 4 wins in the following campaign. For being that bloody rubbish and effectively cheating while doing so, the Hoops deserve everything they get. Feet off the seats. Next, we have a case of a fan getting crushed by the might of his club, and a story which will have countless West Ham fans thanking their lucky stars. At the end of 2016, Turkish side Trabzonspor opened a shiny new stadium, and with their track record of crowd unrest, with one fan attacking a linesman just months earlier, they demanded spectators treat their new home like a palace. But one supporter decided to put their will to the test by standing on a seat and posting a photo on social media. But it turns out the club wasn't joking. They found the offender, made him wash 10,000 of the seats at the Şenol Güneş Stadium, and to make sure he got the message once and for all, filmed the whole thing and posted it on YouTube. Thankfully though, the fan remained anonymous, so at least he saved some of his dignity. Man City versus UEFA. Have you ever noticed a strange sound coming out of your telly when you switch on a Manchester City Champions League tie? Well, that's because fans at the Etihad revel in booing the famous UEFA anthem. The European governing body have gained a reputation over the years for disproportionate punishments, and Man City are a perfect example. It started back in 2012. In a Europa League clash away at Porto, Citizen striker Mario Balotelli was bombarded with racial abuse from the home terraces, leading to a €20,000 fine for the Liga NOS side. But just a month later, City were fined €30,000 for coming out of the changing rooms 30 seconds late for the second half. 2 years later, fans of the English club were left disappointed once again when CSKA Moscow were ordered to play their fixture with City behind closed doors due to a succession of racist incidents. This meant supporters who had booked flights and accommodation had to stay at home, but somehow 650 CSKA fans still managed to find a way in, an offence that went unpunished by UEFA. To rub salt into the wounds, Platini considered punishing City fans for their continual booing of the anthem, but sensibly decided to refrain. After all, they didn't want a riot on their hands, did they? Nicklas Bendtner. But UEFA really took the biscuit with Nicklas Bendtner when the former Arsenal striker was caught with his trousers around his ankles, or more literally, his shorts around his waist. After scoring for Denmark in a 3-2 loss to Portugal at Euro 2012, Bendtner lifted his shirt to reveal the elastic of his Paddy Power sponsored underwear. With UEFA rules banning players from wearing any brands on their kits at the tournament, this was considered a heinous crime. Bendtner was banned for one game and ordered to cough up €100,000 in compensation for the admittedly cheeky marketing tactic. Considering Porto were fined 5 times less that for their fans' racist abuse just months earlier, it's clear where UEFA's priorities lay. No one crosses Ferguson. Man United's legendary former coach Sir Alex Ferguson is known for not taking any, and this has been true of the Scot since his early years. Ferguson was no doubt a hard taskmaster, and despite reports of him fining Cristiano Ronaldo $8,000 for sending texts on the training pitch turning out to be false, his conduct towards players has verged into unreasonable territory before. In 1981, he was under pressure to build on winning Aberdeen's second ever league title the season before. In fact, Ferguson was feeling the heat so much that when Dandy striker John Hewitt had the audacity to overtake him on a public road, he slapped him with a fine. Utterly ridiculous, but Hewitt did go on to score the winner against Real Madrid in the Cup Winners' Cup final 2 years later, so maybe it worked. Red card record sent in to us from @TheDemigorgon on Twitter. Now, there have been some pretty ludicrous red cards handed out over the years. Turkish wingback Hakan Ünsal was sent packing for passing the ball to Rivaldo at the 2002 World Cup. Robin van Persie was given his marching orders for scoring from an offside position in 2011. And Lyon's Marcelo was given a second yellow for accidentally flicking the first out of the ref's hand. But surely nothing comes close to what happened to poor old Lee Todd back in 2000. The Cross Farm Park Celtic player, no, we haven't heard of them either, was so surprised by the volume of the referee's whistle at kickoff that he exclaimed, "F*** me, that was loud." The ref took the comment personally and sent Todd off, in what remains the fastest ever red card. After the game, Todd said, "Anyone else would have done the same. He nearly blew my ear off." His side still won 11-2 though, so he can't have been that big a loss. North Korea humiliated. When North Korea entered the World Cup for the first time in 44 years back in 2010, there were a fair few who were concerned for the players, and with good reason. The Footballing Minnows campaign in the finals was to be used to push nationalist pride in the country, despite them being drawn in a group of death with Brazil, Portugal and the Ivory Coast. The government originally banned showing games live to avoid national embarrassment, but after their gutsy 2-1 loss to Brazil, decided to air their following match against Portugal. It proved a catastrophic idea. They were torn apart, conceding 6 second-half goals to lose 7-0. On arrival back home with 3 losses to their name, they were forced onto a stage and criticised by the country's sports minister in front of an audience of hundreds. They were then ordered to blame the poor showing on manager Kim Jong-un, who was then punished by being expelled from the Workers' Party, fired from his job, and reportedly forced to become a builder. Roy Hodgson, count yourself lucky. Ivory Coast detained. Similarly to North Korea in 2010, the Ivory Coast squad returned from the African Cup of Nations in 2000 to the wrath of their homeland. They had managed just one win and went out in the groups, and with fans livid at their performance and the money they had earned for taking part on top of their European wages, it was decided the safest place for them was in an army camp. The Ivorian government insisted that the detention was purely to protect the players, who included Marseille's Ibrahima Bakayoko, Feyenoord's Bonaventure Kalou, and Celtic's Oliver Tebele. However, some reports suggested that the squad were put through their paces at the camp and made to attend lectures on patriotism. Furthermore, the country's military leader Robert Guai even threatened the players with full-on military service if they repeated such a poor showing. But luckily for them, he was voted out and had fled the country within months. Saddam's son. Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq carries a legacy of brutality, and it was no different for the country's football team. As head of the Iraqi Olympic Committee, Hussein's son Uday was obsessed with the national side's success, despite taking little interest in the sport itself, and his punishments were no laughing matter. After failing to reach the 1994 World Cup, the Lions of Mesopotamia were reduced to nothing, as they were imprisoned and allegedly forced to kick balls made out of concrete in shame. Uday would also ring up the dressing room personally at half-time and threaten to cut the players' legs off. And former Lions star Shahrar Haidar told a particularly harrowing tale, where after a 2-0 friendly loss to Jordan, he and 3 others were imprisoned, dragged along their backs over concrete and forced to jump into vats of raw sewage, making their wounds infected, before receiving lashings to their feet every single day. The sadistic leader even kept a so-called torture card which detailed how many times a player should be beaten after a poor performance. When football becomes more than just a game, it can be truly horrific.
So thanks once again for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to click on screen right now, check out one of our other cracking videos, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.